Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here. The Chychrun rumors are finally done. Chychrun has been dealt to the Ottawa Senators, and we also have a few other trades to discuss, as unsigned goalie prospect Erik Portillo has been moved by the Buffalo Sabres after saying he will not sign with the Sabres, and the Vancouver Canucks unloaded a lot of draft capital to acquire Detroit Red Wings defenseman Filip Hronek. We'll get to all of those details coming up right now. Hello and welcome to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. In this video, I'll start things off with a pretty big substantial deal that happened between the Red Wings and the Canucks, as the Detroit Red Wings send defenseman Filip Hronek and their 2023 4th round pick to the Vancouver Canucks in exchange for the Vancouver Canucks 2023 2nd round pick and the New York Islanders 2023 1st round pick. So this is a pretty big deal for both sides. We'll start things off with the more simpler side in Detroit, as they have recently extended a couple of good young defensemen. Now, we know that they extended Olimata about a week ago, and they recently just extended Jake Wallman, so they have a lot of good defensemen right now. They also have a couple of good guys weighing in the wings, so they have a lot of good defensive prospects, and I think that might have made Hronek expendable. Hronek's a really good top 4 defenseman. In the earlier part of the season, he was even producing more points than Seider, and Seider's their number 1 offensive defenseman. So it's been a really good season for Filip Hronek, and I think the move to Vancouver should help him a lot. The Red Wings get, in my opinion, an extremely good package. They get the Islanders 2023 first round pick that the Canucks acquired in the Bo Horvat deal. Now, the same conditions are on that pick. This is a top 12 protected pick. If the pick is 13 or lower in this year's draft, the Red Wings will get that pick. If the pick is 12th or higher in the draft for the Islanders, then the Red Wings will get an unprotected 2024 first-round pick. So, once again, it really does depend on where the Islanders sit in the standings, but the Red Wings are able to get a first-round pick for Hronek, which I think is an absolutely outstanding job by GM Steve Yzerman. And they even get the Canucks 2023 second-round pick, and with the Canucks being a bottom 10 team, they should be able to get like a 15th to 20th pick in this year's draft, and then somewhere in the top 10 in the second round of this year's draft. So I think losing Hronek, especially when they're still competing for a playoff spot, not ideal, but they get a first round pick back in that trade, they get a second round pick back, and they now have a lot of draft capital going into this season. So I think it's also possible we maybe see a trade that maybe bolsters this team as well. We know there's still a few defensemen on the market, like a Colin Parayko or Mackenzie Weegar, who are signed long term. And there's also a couple of lower-end defensemen who are on expiring deals, like a Klingberg. So I think that there's a possibility that the Red Wings could use the draft capital to go out and try and replace him. But I think this is a really good deal. I just think it's definitely one that they could not pass up. I think Hronek for a first and a second round pick is absolutely a steal for the Red Wings. On the Canucks side, not as much of a steal, but a really good deal nonetheless. They get Filip Hronek, who is a really good top 4 defenseman. I think Hronek should fit in well on the second pair for the Vancouver Canucks. He's definitely a really good offensive defenseman. Hronek signed for this year and next year at a $4.4 million cap hit and will be an RFA at the end of the deal. So the Canucks could have him for a very long time. I think that made it a little bit better to move their first and second round pick. He's having a career season. His previous career high he had last year, putting up 5 goals and 38 points in 78 games last year. This year, he's already hit the 38-point mark. He has 9 goals, and he's only done it in 60 games. So it's quite possible his next point is going to be his career high in points for the season. So Hronek's going to be a really good fit, I think, in Vancouver. They have a good offensive defenseman in Quinn Hughes. They have another good offensive defenseman in Hronek. Now they just need a couple of defensive defensemen to round out that top 4. But I think this is a really good move. Hronek should be a good offensive defenseman on that second pair for a couple of years to come, and I think this is a really good move for Vancouver. They also get a 4th round pick in 2023, so they do get at least some draft capital back after moving the 1st and 2nd round pick in this year's draft. So basically, they move a first for Hronek, and then they move down 2 rounds in the draft. So not overly ideal given the fact of how deep this draft is. But I think that it's the price they have to pay to get a good top 4 defenseman, and I think Hronek could definitely be a good top 4 defenseman in Vancouver. So, in my opinion, I think the Red Wings do win this trade, just given the fact that they were able to get a 1st and 2nd round pick in a very deep draft for Hronek. No offense to Hronek, he's a really good player, but I'm really quite surprised they were able to pull a 1st and 2nd round pick out of Vancouver. So I definitely think, as of it sits right now, Detroit wins this deal. Maybe if Detroit just drafts a couple of busts with those 2 draft picks, and Hronek excels with the Vancouver Canucks, maybe in a couple of years' time this looks completely differently and the Canucks win this deal, but I think for the time being, the Red Wings do win this deal, in my opinion. Over with the LA Kings. They are the team who were able to acquire Buffalo Sabres prospect goalie Erik Portillo. Now, Portillo is a really good prospect. Him and Devin Levi looked like they would be future NHL goalies. But if you look at the Sabres roster, they still have Erik Portillo signed for another year. Pekka Luukkonen's taking strides this year for the Sabres. You have Devin Levi, who's in the prospect and seems to be their next starting goaltender. And then you have Portillo. So Portillo was really like the third or fourth string goalie for the Sabres. I mean, you had Levi and Luukkonen, who seemed to be really solid netminders for the next couple of seasons. So Portillo really didn't have a clear shot at the NHL in Buffalo, so he said he wasn't going to sign with them, and this is a way for the Sabres to recoup an asset. So Portillo was a 4th round pick. They're able to get a 3rd round pick in return. So from the Buffalo side of things, I think this is pretty good. And Portillo didn't want to resign. They still have a good couple of goaltenders in Levi and Luukkonen, so the loss of Portillo is not too bad, and they're able to get a 3rd round pick in this year's draft, a really deep draft too. So I think this is a really smart move by Buffalo to move someone who wasn't going to sign for a good 3rd round pick. And I think while it's not overly fantastic to lose Portillo, I think they trade him to Western Conference, which is probably a good move by them, so they don't trade him to a division rival or something. And also, they get a 3rd round pick in return. So I think this is a pretty smart move by Buffalo, but I think for LA, this is even better move. They know they don't have really good goaltending. We talked about in an earlier video how they moved quick. They got Jonas Korpisalo. They have Copley signed for this year. They extended him for one more season. They have Korpisalo. Pedersen is in the minors right now, and he hasn't done very good at the NHL level over the past couple of seasons. So Portillo can definitely be their goalie of the future, I think. Maybe not next year, but if he does end up signing with the LA Kings instead of going to free agency, he can probably be their goaltender in like 2 to 3 years' time. I think maybe in a year or two he starts to become the backup, and I think in 2 to 3 years he could definitely be the Kings starter. So I think this is a really good deal for the LA Kings to get the young player. He's had a few good seasons in the NCAA with the University of Michigan. Had a great season last year, putting up a 2.14 goals against average and a .926 save percentage in 42 games. He hasn't played as much so far this year. He does have a bit worse numbers, putting up a 3.01 goals against average and a .908 save percentage in 31 games, but he still looks like a brilliant young goalie. So I think if he can sign after the season into college, he can go into next year, start in the AHL, see if he can do well. I think in a couple years' time, he should definitely be a good NHL level goalie for the LA Kings. So, in my opinion, I think the Kings do win this deal because Portillo does have a bright future and looks to be a good NHL, at the very least, backup or tandem goalie, if not a starter. And I think while the Sabres were in a difficult position with Portillo not willing to sign with them, they're able to get a draft pick back in return, and they still have good goalies, Levi and Luukkonen, in their system. So I think this is a good deal. Maybe a win-win for both the teams. I think getting a 3rd round pick back is really good for Buffalo, and I think the Kings get a really good young player in Erik Portillo for the future. So really good move by both of these teams. And lastly, over to the big trade of the day so far. Jakob Chychrun has finally been moved. The Arizona Coyotes defenseman is going to be moved to the nation's capital of Canada, in Ottawa, as the Ottawa Senators have acquired Chychrun for a conditional 2023 1st round pick, a conditional 2024 2nd round pick, and a 2026 2nd round pick. Now, for the Arizona side of things, a lot of teams were looking at Chychrun, and they decided to go different directions. We know the Kings had serious talks. They went after Gavrikov. We know the Oilers had serious talks. They went after Ekholm. We know the Canes were even in the conversation. They went after Gostisbehere. So the list of teams that the Chychrun could have been dealt to was dwindling. So the asking price had to be lowered. They were trying to get at least 2 first-round quality picks and prospects, but instead they wound up getting just 1 first-round pick. Now the conditions on the picks for the Arizona Coyotes are as followed. The 1st round pick is top 5 protected this year. So if the Ottawa Senators get a top 5 pick in this year's draft, they will keep it, and that 1st round pick will be moved to the 2024 draft and become a 2024 unprotected 1st round pick. The condition on the 2nd round pick is if the Senators wind up making the playoffs and surprise everyone and make the Eastern Conference Final this year, that 2nd round pick will be upgraded to a 1st round pick that is top 10 protected. And if the Sens get a top 10 pick in next year's draft, then that pick will be transferred to an unprotected 2025 1st round pick for Arizona. So really good deal. They're going to get a 1st, 2 seconds, possibly 2 firsts and a 2nd for Chychrun. It's not as big of a package as I think anyone was expecting. I think a lot of people were expecting a couple more pieces to be added, including maybe like a good prospect and maybe another pick. But I think this is okay value for Chychrun. They still get a really good haul. And I think that these picks should definitely be able to help Arizona get a lot of good young players. I think that 1st round pick, if it doesn't end up in the top 5, is going to give them a really good young player. I don't really see the Sens making the Eastern Conference Finals, so I would expect it to probably be 2 second-round picks, one in 2024, one in 2026. But definitely, still, I think I'm a little surprised that Chychrun went for this price, and that a lot of teams like LA, Edmonton, Carolina went other directions when he could have been added for this price. I think LA for sure, and maybe even Edmonton could have pulled off this deal, but the one thing that I've seen a lot of people say is that Ottawa didn't need to have Arizona to take on money, whereas the Kings or the Oilers were up against the cap and would have needed someone else to take on money. So I'm not too surprised that he was able to go to Ottawa, given the fact that they have a lot of cap space and were able to fit in Chychrun without having to give Arizona money to take on. So really good move for both these teams. As for the Ottawa Senators, they finally get their defenseman. Since the offseason, we've been hearing them being linked to a plethora of possible defensemen that they could go after, and Chychrun was one of them earlier on, but the asking price was too high, the Sens didn't want to pay it, so they left, and obviously the price lowered, so Ottawa got back into it and got Chychrun. And Chychrun's going to be a fantastic fit to this team. He currently has this year plus 2 more seasons left at a $4.6 million cap hit, and he's had a fantastic season this year. He had 7 goals and 21 points in 47 games last year, but was pretty injured, pretty banged up, and really couldn't have a really healthy season. This year, completely different story. He was injured for the start of the season. He got back. Since then, he had 7 goals and 28 points in 36 games before being scratched due to trade-related reasons. And I think this is going to be an amazing fit for Ottawa. Whether he plays on like the right side or left side, because he can't play both, and whether he plays with a guy like Sanderson or Chabot, or maybe on his own line, I think this is going to be another important piece for the Sens. And now they have a really good top 6, and I could see them challenge for a playoff spot this year as well. They've started to win a couple games. They're not too far out, so the addition of Chychrun is going to extremely help the Sens. And it's not just for this year. So they have this year plus 2 more seasons for Chychrun, and he can help them, even if they don't make the playoffs this year, he can help them push for a playoff spot over the next couple of seasons. So for the Sens, they get a really good defender. They've been looking for a defender for a while now, and we now know that they are able to get Chychrun, and Chychrun should make that defensive core a lethal unit. As for the Coyotes, they get an underwhelming return, but I think to get this situation over with and finally get Chychrun removed, it was worth it, given the fact that this Chychrun saga has been going on for a while now, and they're finally being able to move him. So that saga's done, and Arizona will be able to get on with their season, and they get a couple of decent picks in return. So I think this is going to be a really good move for the Arizona Coyotes, getting a first and a couple of seconds, possibly another first, but definitely a good pickup for Arizona to get these picks. And Ottawa finally gets that defenseman they've been looking at for a while. So some really good deals. In my opinion, I think Ottawa wins the Chychrun deal, given the fact they were able to get Chychrun for that sort of a price when it was speculated that the asking price was a ton higher. I think that the Kings win the Portillo deal, given the fact they get the good young goalie, whereas the Buffalo gets the future assets. And in the Hronek deal, I think Detroit is the winner, given the fact that they were able to get a first and second round pick for Hronek. But I think in time it could change. So it's definitely possible that the other teams could wind up winning the deal. But in my opinion, as of right now, I think Ottawa wins the Chychrun deal, LA wins the Portillo deal, and Detroit wins the Hronek deal. So I would like to know what you think about all of these trades down in the comments. What do you think about Chychrun going to Ottawa? Do you think Portillo is a good fit in LA? And will Hronek do really good in Vancouver? I would like to know what you think down in the comments. And remember, keep up to date with more videos. We'll have our scheduled Thursday video tomorrow. And we might do a couple more videos if there's some more trades as well. So keep up to date on all the latest videos that I do. This is all I'm going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video and subscribe. I also do a blog, which I will leave a link to in the description below. Remember to check out the Trade Deadline Live blog on Friday the 3rd as the trade deadline day comes in. Not exactly sure how many players will be dealt, given the fact that all the big players are being dealt right now. But we will still have the Trade Deadline blog live on March 3rd, so definitely check that out. I will leave a link to that on Friday in the description below as well. And I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.